Hi, my name is Lexi Jong and welcome to my channel. Today I have another foundation review for you, and this is gonna be my last one for quite a while. This is the new SUQQU The Cream Foundation. This foundation comes in a pretty understated box. You know, this is that plasticized cardboard, and I purchased shade 110, the cream foundation. It is made in Japan. There are 12 shades available and you get 30 grams of product for $79 US. I purchased mine from Selfridges. The actual foundation comes in a heavy duty jar, and you know, honestly, the packaging on this reminds me a little bit of Clé de Peau, just because, you know, I feel like if they had a foundation in this package, it would look like this as well, but you know, obviously the Clé de Peau blue. So it's just, they do seem similar, and it seems just as luxe to me. So the actual foundation is a cream foundation, and it comes in this jar, and you get a little spatula that comes with it. So this was in the bottom of the box. So when you open it up, it's kind of, you see this little tray that it sits in. So the spatula is in here, but it blends in with the packaging. So if you purchase this, make sure you take your spatula out, because I didn't see it at first. I had read that it came with a spatula. So I was like looking for it, and I didn't see it because when it's inserted in here, it just kind of blends in. So just a note. Now, the spatula itself is just a piece of plastic, and you can see here that you do have kind of like a thinner section here. The rest of it is a little bit thicker for you to hold. Now, personally, I'm not huge on foundations that come in jars because they do get a little messy. And this does come with a little plastic, you know, seal that goes on top. But honestly, I just threw mine out this morning because it just got so messy. It was a pain to use. Sorry, my hand's a little red there from some scrubbing, but this is the shade that I purchased. This is shade 110. And I'm gonna leave this here so you can see if there's any oxidation. While we are testing for oxidation, let me go ahead and tell you a few points about this foundation. This is from the SUQQU website, and it says, a glow that shifts and changes with time, refined for enhanced beauty at every stage, feels smooth to the touch, becoming one with the skin and giving the skin a melted in natural glow. A new cream foundation, SUQQU's most luxurious yet. It includes 13 plant-based ingredients, and it is made in Japan. Now, one thing that I thought was interesting is, although it doesn't say anything on the package, if you go to the website, it does mention that there is SPF coverage with the foundation, and it ranges depending on the shade that you purchase. So it ranges between SPF 20 and 30. Depending on the shade. And honestly, I wouldn't count any of this as SPF coverage anyways, because you're probably not using enough to get that. But I did want to note that the amount of SPF coverage does not seem to depend on how light of a color you choose. A lot of times, you know, using like titanium dioxide and things like that, you might get more of that product in a paler foundation shade. That's not true here. The darkest shades actually have the best SPF coverage. They're SPF 30. This one here is shade 110, which is the lightest in the neutral section. And that has an SPF 25. So it kind of depends on your shade. So there is a chart on the SUQQU website where you can look at the SPF range for a particular shade. Now, I am wearing the foundation today, and you can see this melted in appearance. That is a perfect way to describe this. And I think it is a beautiful foundation. It looks beautiful on the skin. I didn't powder it. You can powder it, but you don't have to. I think this foundation formula, I have pretty normal skin. It leans a little dry at times, but it's been pretty normal. So you know, I think this foundation is probably best for oilier, normal, possibly slightly dry, but if you're really dry, this is probably gonna end up looking too drying on your skin, because I do find that it seems to absorb oil a little bit. So I used the Sorbitan Perfectionist primer today, but I do have a wear test that I will show you where I have one side with the primer and one side without. And one of the things that I noticed in there is that regardless, my skin really did not get oily or greasy on either side with this product. So compared to the other foundations I've been testing recently, I would say this one did one of the better jobs of absorbing any excess oil and not creating any additional like dewiness or glowiness. So I would definitely say that this should work well for oilier skin types. Again, my skin isn't oily anymore. It was when I was younger. So I'm not, completely sure on that, but I would tend to say that it would work well for oily to normal skin types. Let's go ahead and compare the swatch to a fresh swatch. So you can see that the amount of oxidation that you get, I mean, I have never seen a foundation that doesn't oxidize absolutely at all. So this is pretty minimal, no real oxidation to speak of. It's a pretty similar color. Now, before we move on to more information about the foundation, I want to also go over the concealer. So SUQQU just recently released this new foundation and this new Intense Cover Concealer. And I actually got this first because the foundation shade that I wanted wasn't available originally online, and shipping it to the United States had an insane shipping fee. So this is the concealer, the Intense Coverage Concealer. And this is shade 21. It's actually the lightest in the pinker section. So the foundation 210 and the 21 concealer kind of go together. I got this. I noticed that it's a lot darker than I was expecting, so I went with the 110 for the foundation. Color-wise, for either of these, I don't think the color match is great for me. However, the formula of both of these products is really very nice. And when I do the wear test, I am testing the foundation and the concealer. So you'll be able to see both of those up close. Now, before we move on to that, let me just go over some details about the concealer. This retails for $41.50 from Selfridges, and there are 7 shades in the concealer, and you get 6 grams of product. What SUQQU says about this is it's high coverage without that cakey covered up look, a formula that melts in a smooth layer onto the skin and stays put without creasing or breaking apart, infused with an original blend of silky powder for a finish that affords a delicate spun silk glow. I have to say that this concealer is really nice. I think it's more medium to full coverage, so it's a little lighter on the full coverage spectrum. It's not going to completely block out everything. You will still, especially if you have really dark circles, you'll still see some of that through this, but it is buildable. And I have to say that it really does become one with your skin. It's one of the best concealer formulas that I have used. I really, really like this concealer. Unfortunately, I'm not thrilled with the color match with this concealer. So I will have some foundation colors and concealer color comparisons at the end of the video. But right now, let's go ahead and take a look at the wear test. And we are going to start off with the new SUQQU Cream Foundation. I have shade 110, and it does come with a little cover here and a spatula. So the spatula is straight, but this part here, you can kind of see that bend there. It gets thinner there, so you can kind of see the curve there. So I'm just going to scrape some of this off of the lid here onto my hand. So here is the foundation, and I'm going to apply this today with the SUQQU T11. I actually forgot, I want to test the primer. So I'll put the primer here on this side of my face, and we'll compare. All right, so straight off the bat, the side with the primer, I think it does look slightly better. Whereas on this side, I feel like it kind of soaked up some of the foundation, my skin soaked it up. So I don't have quite as much coverage on the cheek there. Add a little bit more here. And I just think it looks a little bit smoother with the primer. And we're going to apply the concealer, and I have the lightest pink shade of the concealer, which is number 21. And I think it's still a little dark. So I'm just going to use a tiny bit. I'm just going to add a little bit more to this side. Right, and here is the foundation and the concealer. I'm going to move you in closer so you can get an up close look. Here is the foundation without the primer. And you can see the concealer. You can see it's a little bit too yellow for me. And this is the side with the primer. So I just feel like the cheek area looks a little bit smoother, and just the coverage is a little bit better on this side, even though technically I used more product on the side without the primer. And again, you can see the concealer. So the color isn't perfect, but I mean, I think the coverage is good. They call it a full coverage, but I think it's more medium full. I don't think it goes all the way up to full. But I mean, look at it with the lines and everything. I think it does a great job of not settling. So we're gonna do a wear test with the foundation today. So this is time 0. And I'm not gonna apply any products to my face today. So I'll do some eyeshadow and some lipstick, but I will leave this plain so that we can kind of see how everything wears. This is the final look for today, and you can see that the foundation still has kind of a dewy look, and it feels like freshly moisturized skin, like I had just put on my face lotion. And then for lips, I did a mix of the 2 SUQQU lip products. This is the Glow formula in 03, it's a coral shade. And then I mixed in the SUQQU Fog shade in 06. And I have that on my lips along with the SUQQU Fall Winter eye palette in Tambata or something like that. I don't remember. I'll have the name down below. It has been 3.5 hours since I applied my makeup this morning, and I think both sides are doing a fantastic job, but I wanted to give you an update on what they feel like. So the side with the primer, you know, my skin feels nicely moisturized but dry to the touch. Like I don't have any of that tacky texture to it, you know, like kind of like moisturizer that hasn't sunken in. Everything feels like it has sunken in, but it feels well moisturized. This side here is slightly tacky, kind of like you have moisturizer that hasn't sunken in all the way, but mostly. So it has definitely absorbed more so than after the application, and it's comfortable. I think both sides look good, and I do think though the side with the primer looks slightly better, and I'll move you in closer to get a better view of that in a second. This here is the mix of the SUQQU liquid lipsticks with the Fog and the Glow formula together, and you can see how well it has worn through eating and drinking and everything so far. It's been 3.5 hours. It's holding up really well. All right, so this is the side with the primer, and you can see how smooth everything looks. And I mean, it just looks like really nice skin. So that's good. No settling or anything. The concealer, even you can see, I didn't powder or anything, but you can see how well that's holding up. And again, looks good. So this is the side without the primer, and you can just see a little bit more redness through this side, and I think it just doesn't look quite as good as this side. Both sides though feel very comfortable. Nothing has gotten excessively oily or excessively dry, so everything feels good. I just personally prefer the texture of the primer side a little bit more, just because it's very smooth and silky feeling, and This is also very smooth feeling, and if I weren't comparing them side by side, it wouldn't be a huge difference, but this does feel a little bit more moist. It has been just about 9 hours since I applied everything this morning. You can see what is left of the liquid lipsticks that I applied this morning. Again, this was a mix of the Fog and the Glow formula. And I have found that the Fog formula lasts a really long time on my lips. The Glow formula, not so much, but the Fog really does. And the combination still lasts pretty well. So this is after, several meals today, and I just finished ice cream. So the actual color is worn off of the lips, but I do still have the lip line. Now, as for the foundation, I think the foundation is still holding up great. This is probably going to be my last check-in today. And I still think that the primer side looks a bit better than the non-primer side. And I do think that it has faded a little bit more on this side. There's no settling in lines or anything, and I think everything has held up well. Concealer, everything has held up well also, and I'm gonna move you in closer so you can get a better look. So here is the side with the primer, and as I mentioned with my last check-in, it feels smooth to the touch, and it just feels like nicely moisturized skin, but there's no tackiness as though the moisturizer hasn't sunken in. So everything feels, dry and smooth. And then on the side without the primer, it does feel a little bit tackier. So I can feel, it feels more like you applied a light moisturizer and it hasn't fully absorbed yet. You can see around the lips, no real settling or anything. And the concealer, I think, has held up really, really well. Again, nothing was powdered. So one more time, the side with primer. And again, I used the Sorbitan Perfectionist primer. And the side without primer. Everything is going strong, and I love the finish on this foundation. I also have a short clip of today's application so you can kind of see everything up close. So I'm going to show that here, and then we'll meet back and discuss my thoughts on these products. So we're going to apply the SUQQU Cream Foundation. This is shade 110. So it does come with a little spatula, so I'm going to get a little bit onto my hand, and you can see that's hanging off, so you can see kind of the texture of this. Even though this looks, pretty thick, it's actually more moussey in texture. So it's not uncomfortable. It doesn't feel heavy. This is the SUQQU T11. You can see that this shade, it's not a perfect color for me, but I'm not sure if I would have been able to get a better shade with this line. So I've taken to kind of smearing this on my face instead of just doing a dot because of the actual texture of it. You can see when you do a dot, I didn't have too much on my finger at the time, but when you do a dot, it kind of like gloops up. And so I'd rather kind of spread out that area before using my brush. So with this formula, I tend to smear it. So this is like a medium to full coverage foundation. It's not quite full coverage. You can still see skin texture. And I think the more I build this up, the more you can see like kind of the yellow undertones of this foundation shade. So typically I just do one light layer. I built it up just a little bit more just so you can really kind of see the finish and the colors. And I think when you first apply this, it looks incredibly skin-like, and it just kind of like, it just looks, it's got this really nice velvety look to the skin. After it's been on your skin for a while, it sort of melts in a little bit, and you can kind of see now that the foundation's starting to kind of melt into my skin now. So you're going from more of this like plush velvety texture to something that's just a little bit more melted in. And that's really the best way for me to describe it. So let me apply the concealer and then we'll look at the foundation again. The concealer I have in shade 21, and this is the lightest pinky shade. So I got this one first, and then I got the foundation afterwards. And because this one is still pretty dark and beige, figured I would try the one with the neutral undertones for the foundation. And I don't think either of them are a great match. This is a full coverage concealer, but really I think it's more medium to full because you can still, like, it doesn't completely hide everything. And I think the formula is fantastic. I really like it. I love the way it feels on the skin, how well it lasts and resists. All right, so the foundation is starting to kind of melt into my skin, and you can see it still looks really natural. You can see the concealer application here. I'm going to bring you in even closer so you can get an up close shot. Here is the foundation. So when you first apply it, the foundation actually looks a bit more like the Cochindo Moisture Foundation. It looks very, you know, just like freshly moisturized skin. And then as it kind of melts in, it has a little bit more of the finish like the Aqua, the new Clé de Peau, the new Chanel. So it's kind of that like melted in your skin but better type look. Here's the foundation. The concealer. So you can see it really doesn't gather in the lines. It provides, you know, fairly good coverage. I'd say it's more medium coverage, and you can build it up, but, you know, personally on me, I don't really like the way it looks built up, just mostly because of the color. I'll add on one more layer though right now so you can see what it looks like. So I'll just add a little bit more to this eye, and I use the tiniest bits. I find it always spreads better and everything looks more seamless if you go in with small amounts. So there you go. You can see you do get more coverage. It can be built up. I'm going to do the other eye to blend that in. All right. So although 2 layers does provide more coverage, because this isn't a great color match for me, it really provides more of these like yellow halos around my eyes. So I personally avoid that. I hope those clips were helpful. Overall, I think both of these are fantastic products, and I really do love the formulas of both of these items. I think the foundation, you know, it goes on very similarly to the Cochindo Moisture Foundation at first, and then after it kind of settles in your skin, it kind of has a finish more of the Cochindo Aqua, which is also very similar to the new Clé de Peau and the new Chanel. So, you know, they all are kind of doing this melted in look, which I think is very natural and looks great. One of the things that sets this foundation apart from some of those others that I mentioned is I think this one's really well suited for oilier skin types because, again, as I mentioned, it does seem to absorb some natural oils. It doesn't make your skin dry at all. So if you don't have oily skin, I don't see it drying it out, at least on my normal skin type. But it isn't going to produce any excess oil. It doesn't leave you a greasy mess. And I like that. This is a foundation that I can powder if I want to, but I don't need to. And you still get kind of that nice finish. So finish-wise, I think it's a little similar to the new Clé de Peau Radiant Matte Fluid Foundation because this one is going to be matte with slight luminosity as well. So, you know, it's definitely not a flat matte. You know, it's not what you think of with a traditional matte foundation. They're calling it a glow. But what I mean by that is it's not going to be that dewy kind of glow. It doesn't make your skin look wet or greasy at all. So you have kind of like a matte base with some glow infused into it. And I feel like the Clé de Peau is very similar to that as well, yet the Clé de Peau is going to be a little bit more well suited to drier skin types than this SUQQU foundation is. So I do feel that the two of those foundations have some similarities to them. Now, as to where this foundation ranks in all of the ones I've been trying, I will have more information on that in a week or two. I will do a foundation roundup on all of these that I've been testing and kind of go over again, what I find to be the highs and lows of each foundation, as well as a price comparison and, size comparison and so forth, because I do think a lot of them have some similarities. And honestly, this year's group of new foundations, at least the ones that I've been testing, are the best batch of foundations I have tried in years. So last year we had a few notable ones. For me, that was the Surratt Dewdrop, the Guerlain L'Essentiel. I still like those foundations as well, but I like these better. I like all of these better than those. So I can definitely tell you that now. Now, as for the concealer, I love the formula of this concealer. I think it provides really good coverage. I still don't consider it a true full coverage concealer, because when I think of full coverage concealer, I want to see everything completely covered. And you're still going to see some natural, skin differences and so forth. If dark circles, you'll still see a hint of that. You can still see some of mine. And for me, I'm totally fine with that, because that makes it look more natural. It doesn't look fake and made up. However, if you're somebody who's looking for a true full coverage concealer, I don't think this really meets that qualification. I'd consider it medium to a light full. The thing I really love about this concealer is that the texture of it. It's very smooth. It's not thin or greasy feeling. It actually, it's hard to explain, but the actual formula of it, if you put it between your fingers, it has a little bit of a latex feel to it. So if you're wearing a lip lacquer, for example, the new SUQQU ones, or the Yves Saint Laurent vinyl lip stains, or anything like that, how you rub your lips together and it kind of has that vinyl feel to it. I feel like this concealer has a little bit of that texture. Obviously not to that extent, but I think that's one of the qualities of it that really makes it look so good around the eyes. So this formula, I think, provides good coverage. It looks pretty natural, provided you have a good color match, but it really doesn't crease or, end up looking cakey or anything like that. It doesn't look makeup-y. And that's what I really like about it. And it is buildable. So again, like other concealers, I would definitely recommend going in with light layers and building up from there. Now, for me personally, I ended up going with shade 21 in the concealer, which if you look at the shade charts, they have a pink range and a beige range. And this is the lightest shade in the pinker range. And the beigey shade that was lighter just looked a tad darker, I thought at first. So I decided to go with this. When I got it, it looked pretty dark and beige. So I'm gonna swatch that again so you can see it. And it just looked a lot deeper than I thought. And you can even see during my application video and so forth that it really does look yellowish on me. So I think the color match for me isn't great, and unfortunately, I don't think there is a good color match for me in this range. I was really hopeful because a lot of Japanese foundations and concealers and so forth do offer lighter shades that work well, but this one, you can see how beige that is and pretty dark. So let me compare this one to a few. So this is the Clé de Peau, the concealer in shade I-10, which I also find a little bit too dark for me. And you can see that they are pretty similar. The SUQQU is going to be a bit peachier, but they both have more of that darker tone to them. Another one that I find too dark for me, but again, I love the formula on this one as well. This is the Sisley Phytocerns Éclat. So this is the one in the tube. This is shade 1. And unfortunately for me, Sisley just doesn't really have good shades that for me that, go light enough from any of their base products except the Stilo Lumiere. So you can see that this one's still going to be lighter than both of those. And the peachiness level is pretty similar to the SUQQU, it's just not as dark. Onto some lighter weight concealers. This is the Clé de Peau Radiant Corrector for Eyes in shade I-10. You can see this is going to be a lot lighter, and this is what I was hoping the concealer shade would be. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not I-10, it's Ivory. The foundation I use in Clé de Peau is I-10, but the concealers are both Ivory, and you can see that the two ivories are nothing alike. This is the Chantecaille Le Camouflage Stilo, and this is going to be the lightest shade as well. This is shade 1. You can see that this is going to be a little peachy, but again, it's going to be significantly lighter. And then I have what's left of my Sicily Stilo Lumiere in shade 1. So I think overall these are probably the best ones to look at. I do also have some other concealers that are just nowhere close to this, like the Pat McGrath concealer in L1. Love that formula, but I really should get a deeper shade in that. So here you go. You can see that the SUQQU and the Clé de Peau, the concealer, are going to be the two deepest shades. And, you know, these work better for me, but these are they're just going to be a touch too dark. So I have actually gotten this to work for me because I really love the formula. So I wanted to find a way to get the concealer to work well. So what I've been doing is I will either mix this in with the concealer. This is the Chanel Rosy Light Drops. So I'll mix this in with the concealer, or I'll put on the concealer and then I'll tap this over the top. And both of those really work. If I'm looking for more coverage, I want to put the concealer on first and then tap this on top. And it just kind of neutralizes a little bit of that yellowish tint to it. And for me, that's a good fix. Another option would be like the By Terry CC serums. So these work as well. This is the White Rose, and then this is Starlight Rose that came out in last year's holiday collection. I've tested these with this as well. They work also. I just prefer the Chanel Rosy Light Drops. So as I mentioned, I really like the foundation as well. So let's do some color comparisons. This is shade 110. So after I got the concealer in shade 21, which was the lightest in the pink range, I then looked at the 12 shades that they offer for the foundation, and they have a neutral, a beige, and a pink range. So I went with the lightest in the neutral section, which is still just a little bit too yellow. Now the SUQQU foundation color, I think if I put on, you know, a light layer, the color difference, you know, isn't super noticeable. So it's something I can still use, but I would prefer to have a better match shade. This is the Guerlain L'Essentiel in 00N, and this shade actually works a little bit better for me. It's just a touch lighter, but again, even with this one, if I build it up too much, it looks a little yellowish, but this is naturally a thinner formulation, lighter coverage, so it's not really an issue with that product. All right, let's go over these foundation shades. This one here is the SUQQU in 110, followed by Guerlain L'Essentiel in 00N, and Surat Dewdrop in 1.5. Next up, we have Kojendo Aqua in 002, Kojendo Moisture in 012, the new Clé de Peau Radiant Matte Fluid in I-10, and this is the new Chanel Le Beige Healthy Glow Foundation in BR12. Step back a little. And one more time. SUQQU, Guerlain, Surat, Kojendo Aqua, Kojendo Moisture, Clé de Peau, Chanel. Overall, I think the formulas of both of these SUQQU products are incredible. I really love both of the formulas, and I love the way they look and last on my skin. And I think this SUQQU foundation is going to work great for oily to normal skin tones, and I really, really like it. I think it's a great option. However, if you have a lighter skin tone than I do, I don't think you'll be able to find a match. And if your skin is a little bit cooler toned than mine, I also don't think you'll be able to find a match. I'm not super happy with what I ended up with match-wise. I think it works. Like I can get it to work if I go in with lighter layers, but it still has a little bit of that yellowish hue to it, which I just don't really like. And I think even with the pink line with the concealer, it's still pretty yellowish. So depending on your undertones, you may not be able to find a match in this. I hope this video is helpful. And again, I will have a roundup of all of the foundations and kind of like a breakdown of their pros and cons coming up within the next couple of weeks. I'm still just kind of testing everything a little bit more to kind of figure out exactly where everything falls in my personal ranking. So I will definitely be able to share that with you soon. And overall, I think these were great products, and all of these foundations I've been testing recently are great products, but the formulas that they've been coming up with recently, they're just amazing, and they just make such a difference compared to what we got even just a year ago. So I'm highly impressed with the new offerings this year. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you will know when my next video comes available. And I hope to see you in my next video. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great day and stay safe and healthy.